Death damage from the balloon for the win. Whew! That was intense. Man, oh man, does Clash Royale love the word mega. We got the mega minion, we got the mega knight, we got all kinds of mega this, mega that, mega everything. The most recent challenge has been the mega deck challenge, where you get more than twice the amount of cards that you normally would. If I'm not mistaken, you get a full 18 cards in your deck. So it opened up this door for all kinds of new strategic gameplay and deck building. It not only gives you way more cards to handle, it completely changes how you build your decks and what cards you put in there. It also adjusts how you're going to be playing this deck in the game itself. Now, I have been having an absolute blast with this challenge, guys. It took me a little bit of getting used to at first. I wasn't, too fond of it in my initial turnabout, or whatever you want to call it, roundabout, walkabout, like I'm Australian or something right now. Anyway, I wasn't too fond of it right off the bat, and it took a little bit of getting used to, and I was kind of overwhelmed. I'm like, what am I going to build my deck with? I have no idea what to do. But then I just kind of like broke it down, tried to simplify it, and just took it one step at a time, and I was like, okay, just because you have 18 cards doesn't mean that there aren't going to be archetypes that exist in the game, in the meta, I guess, for this particular challenge. So one thing that came to mind for me was, what if I build just kind of like a beatdown deck, and I build around that, right? So first thing that I did was, do I want to do Hound, or do I want to do Golem, or do I want to do, like, I don't know, P.E.K.K.A. or Mega Knight, something that's more control-y but still a little bit beatdown-y, or Giant or whatever. So I decided I'd kind of take the middle ground. Since you have 18 cards, you really need to think, like, it might be a really long time until I see, say, my win condition. So if you're running like a Hog cycle deck, it might be kind of hard to cycle back to your Hog Rider. So what I did was I started with 2 major beatdown tanks. And you can see them in the top left there. You've got the Golem and you've got the Lava Hound. Now, I was thinking, okay, super beatdown deck, let's include a few other things in there. So actually, one of the first things that I did after putting those 2 major tanks in there was fill in the spells. So I knew that, well, I actually tried a few different variations. I knew that Lightning could be really good for beatdown decks, because if they've got, like, say, like that Witch there, or a Wizard or something, and you've got your Golem up at the opponent's Princess Tower, you can lightning out whatever support they might have, especially if they got 2. If they got like a Witch and an Ice Wizard, I mean, that's 5, 6, 7, 8 value right there for your 6 elixir cost lightning, plus chip damage onto their tower. So definitely, I was like, alright, lightning is going to fit in there pretty well. Let's get a plethora of other spells. I got Tornado just because it's a great spell. It has so much utility. I figured, it'll be good to have in there at some point. And you can be a little bit more lenient with cards in this challenge, because you've got so many that you can put in there. And yes, you can't cycle back to them as quickly, but they all are in there eventually. So you can have really niche cards that you don't use too often, and they can fit a little bit better into this deck. So the Tornado was a little bit like that, but it's more of just like an all-around powerful card. It can take out swarms, it can pull in hogs, all kinds of stuff. And it works really well with the Golem and beatdown decks as well. But a better example of that would be the Clone, and how I put the Clone in there. Clone is a very niche card. It just got nerfed. It was the only card that got nerfed in that April update, and I'm pretty sad about that. But the nerf was pretty minor. It's just not as big of a radius, which is a buff that they gave it not too long ago, so they just reverted that buff. It still clones downward, and the original target going upward rather than side to side, so it's still a pretty decent card, but I think it works out really well in this particular challenge. Let me tell you a little bit more about why. Clone is one of those kind of high-risk, high-reward cards, and I know it's become a lot more meta and a lot more viable lately, but it's still one of those cards that when you've only got 8 card slots in your deck, you're given 1 up for this card that you can't really use too often. It's not like, say, let's see, look at his Valkyrie there. Valkyrie, yeah, traditionally it's used to counter, Goblin Gang, Skeleton Army, Swarmy type units, but it's super universal. It's tanky. It can be used as your mini tank. You can put a hog behind it to push it, to make it tank. You can use it on defense. You can use it right at the bridge. You can use it as like a mini tank to counter whatever's on your tower. You can even use it in really niche situations, like if they've got minions or minion horde coming down the lane, you put it in the opposite lane, kind of like it's an ice golem, and since it can't attack air, it kites those minions into the opposite lane, giving your Princess Towers time to finish them off. So it's one of those cards that has a lot of utility and can be used in a lot of different situations. Clone is not one of those cards. Clone is almost primarily used once you've got a big wave of units onto your opponent's Princess or King Tower. Now, don't get me wrong, as you've seen in like my Reddit posts, you can use Clone on defense. It can be pretty good. You can clone whatever your defensive units are and just double the amount of units that you have. And if you've got the stronger ones in front and the clone ones in back, plus the support of your Princess Tower, you know, it can make this small group of units into like a sizable little army, right? To, you know, pretty much double the DPS output that you have. So it has that potential, but generally that's like a very niche, rare opportunity that you're going to get to use it like that. It's one of those cards that you're usually only going to be using on offense when you've got a whole bunch of stuff onto their tower. So what I'm getting at here with this huge side tangent is, since it is a little bit of a high risk, high reward card, you're not sacrificing as much space in your deck when you've got a full 18 cards in your deck by putting these high risk, high reward cards in there. You can kind of afford to give up one slot since it's one of 18 rather than only one of 8. And also on top of that, you can afford to kind of let it sit in your hand or take a long time to cycle back to it. Or if you do use it, it's going to take a long time to cycle back to it. You got a lot of other cards, so it's not like it's constantly just sitting in your hand, taking up space, and then, you know, being a waste of elixir because you misplaced it or something like that. So it fits really well in this kind of a deck. So I've talked about how this is kind of a beatdown deck, how I've got a few niche spells in there. And I also just included a few other base spells in there. I included the Fireball just to have a mid-range spell. I figured, yeah, I've got the Heavy Lightning in there, but since we have so many cards and we can cycle through so many different things, I'll include a few other spells in there as well. So we just have the Fireball in there is just kind of a mid-range spell, and we have the Snowball in there as the light spell. Normally I'd run Zap, but Snowball's been super meta lately, and I've been having a lot of fun with it, so I decided to run Snowball. It synergizes really well with like the Tornado and other stuff like that in this deck as well. So it definitely works out. Now, that's pretty much it for spells. You got the Tornado, which also kind of pseudo plays a light spell. You got the E-Wiz, which you can use to combo with the Tornado, uses Enter the Arena effect, kind of like a spell in a way sometimes. So you got other things in there. But, I mean, if you think about it, that's 5 full spells. 5 of your 18 cards. That's like over a quarter of your deck is just spells, right? So I figured at that point that was enough. I already end up with these awkward hands occasionally where I've just got a handful of spells. But for the most part, you're not going to end up with that handful of spells too often, because you'll have pretty good opportunity to get value out of like your Fireball, things like that. And another thing to keep in mind, guys, I almost thought about doing like a log bait or a spell bait deck with this challenge, because since they take so long to cycle back to all their stuff, if they've only got, you know, like me, I'm only running Lightning and Fireball. So if they had Elixir Pump and like Wizard and Witch and Musketeer and Executioner and all these kind of like spell bait kind of cards, you know, Royal Hogs, right? Maybe I use my Fireball on the Royal Hogs, I use my Lightning on the Witch and the Wizard. Now he can safely put down his Elixir Pump, and then it's a super long time before I can cycle back to my counters, which would be, you know, my heavy or medium spell, you know, the Lightning or the Fireball. And then it would, you know, allow him to get huge benefit, huge value from that Elixir Pump. So definitely something to keep in mind here. But let's talk more specifically about my theory behind this deck and why I chose these cards. So once I had my base, my, you know, 2 tanks, my 5 spells, you know, good utility all around. You got a light spell, got a medium spell, got a heavy spell, got a pseudo spell, which is in the middle, which is the Tornado. And then you've got kind of, what would you call it? High risk, high reward, non-damaging spell. And, you know, I consider like Heal, Freeze, although it does do damage now, but before it did damage, and Clone kind of to be in their own little category of like non-damaging spells that kind of have an unusual effect, and they're generally high risk, high reward. So we got all of that. So then I just started filling in the blanks, and I kind of mixed both a Golem deck, classic Golem cards, and classic Lava Hound cards together. And honestly, guys, a lot of those cards are pretty similar, go together really well, and I just made sure that I had a whole plethora of things. So let's just kind of start at the top here and explain why I chose each card. Well, I've already chosen and explained all the spells and the 2 tanks, so we'll look at the E-Wiz. Well, the E-Wiz, first of all, great universal card. Secondly, you know, well, going back to first, he fits in pretty much any deck, so just slap him wherever. Secondly, he's got that stun effect. He's got the Enter the Arena effect. The stun effect synergizes really well with both of your tanks, because you're going to be seeing Inferno Towers, Inferno Dragons, Sparkies, things like that to counter your Golem, to counter your Lava Hound. So having the E-Wiz in there is automatically really good. You'll see we also have the E-Dragon there for a similar reason, right? Because since you're taking so long to cycle back to that E-Wiz, they might have their counter up every single time that you have used your E-Wiz or whatever it is, excuse me. What I'm trying to say is, like, they might have their Inferno Tower up every time that you put down Lava Hound, but they've baited out your E-Wiz. Now you've got the E-Drag as a backup. So that's why we have kind of those two stunner cards in there. The Lumberjack, he fits really well in pretty much any beatdown deck. You know, he's got massive DPS, he's got that rage effect, he synergizes really well with Clone because he's got that death effect. So it's just kind of a no-brainer, honestly, that he would go in this deck. If you don't have him, you could possibly replace him with a mini P.E.K.K.A. You don't have that Clone death effect anymore, though. But if you do have Lumberjack, it definitely fits really well into this deck. The next thing that we're looking at, well, let's skip the Lava Hound and the Clone because we talked about them, the guards. Couple reasons I got guards in this deck. First of all, you got a Swarm card in there. You got a few Swarm cards in there. You got the Goblin Gang as well. So it fits in there really well. You want to have a few in there because you need those in mostly Lava Hound decks. You see Lava Hound decks almost always run like Skeleton Army or Guards and then a Tombstone. Now, I didn't go with any defensive buildings or anything this deck, and you'll notice that. And I tried like it with Furnace and stuff, and I just personally felt like it didn't work out too well with this kind of archetype, this big beatdown archetype that I was going for. The guards, however, they work out really well for a number of reasons. As I mentioned, they kind of play that swarm effect, that swarm card role in this deck. But on top of that, they have that shield effect, and I know I talk about this a lot every time I put guards in a deck, but just to quickly reiterate, you know, they'll be able to live through whatever spells, whatever heavy or medium spells your opponent has, poison being the exception. Anything that does instant damage, the guards will be able to live through it. That shield just gives them an extra beefiness, and people underrate them. They're kind of an underrated card. They can counter things like P.E.K.K.A. and everything really well, so I included them in there as my secondary swarm card, with the Goblin Gang kind of being the first. Baby Dragon, another no-brainer. Fits really well into beatdown decks. You see him in most Golem decks, although I don't run him personally because I don't have him up to level. I might run him on tournament standard level, like, you know, challenge runs and stuff, but I wouldn't usually run him on ladder on my main account. However, on my alt account, I do have him maxed out. Great card. I use him in giant decks as well on my alt account, so giant beatdown. So he fits naturally into most beatdown decks. He's tanky, so he's got a lot of HP. He's got low DPS, but he's got splash damage, so he takes out, you know, skeletons from skeleton armies and things like that. And he's just a good range support unit for your tank. It just fits really well into Golem and Lava Hound decks. And since you're running Lava Hound, he's also an air unit, which synergizes really well with the Lava Hound. Talked about the Snowball already. Goblin Gang, I briefly brushed up on it. And, you know, pretty straightforward. You need a Swarm card in there. You've got two of them. If they log the gang, you've got the guards. If they log the guards like they did just there, the guards live through it. And then you got the gang as well. So just kind of having that Swarm card in there. You could replace it with like a Skeleton Army, although that doesn't attack air. But not as big of a deal in this deck as normal, since you got a bunch of other cards that you could use to attack air. I would recommend Goblin Gang. It's just one of those cards that's very universal and can be used in a lot of different decks, and just fits really well with this beatdown archetype. Then we have the Balloon, and this was a fun one, guys. I subbed this out for a few other things a few times. I tried, you know, like I said, Furnace in there, but I just went for kind of the Lava Loon thing. And I don't normally play Lava Loon. I don't like Lava Loon a lot. I'm not good at it. But I figured with this beatdown, this mega deck, this beatdown deck, I would give it a shot. And it worked out really well, especially with like the clone. If you could clone a Balloon and you get the Lava Hound in front of it too, woo! Their tower is gone, guys. I'm telling you. That thing is as good as dead. So, that's why we have the Balloon in there. It does a great job of picking up some extra damage and absolutely decimating your opponent's towers. And since it's a whole lot of cards in this deck, you can kind of hang on to it or keep it out of cycle for a while and wait for that really opportune time. Don't just be rushing it whenever you can. Wait to put it behind the Lava Hound, especially if you got that clone up. Man, it will wreck their tower so fast. Next we have the Witch. Well, the Witch and the Night Witch kind of go hand in hand. They both synergize really well with the clone, and they both fit really well into beatdown decks because they both spawn units, which also spawn skeletons on death now. So if she's cloned, that suddenly is 6 skeletons on death because 3 from the original and then 3 from the clone, plus whatever else they've spawned already. The Night Witch, same thing. She spawns bats on death. These cards work really well in beatdown decks. The Witch herself plays kind of a ranged support role. She's more of a pseudo glass tank spawner. Not too much of a range support anymore, but she still does have splash damage. She still puts out DPS. She can still auto attack, and it's still ranged. It can attack air. So she plays that role. The Night Witch is more of just building up big beatdown pushes or using for like counter. She does a surprising amount of DPS, the Night Witch, especially with her bats, you know, by her side. And she'll instantly spawn 2 pretty much, and then she'll spawn 2 more on death. So you're almost guaranteed 4 at least, unless she's like instantly gibbed or whatever. But anyway, those 2 fit really well into this deck, into this archetype, because of the fact that they can build up their little babies and just get a huge push going behind your Golem or your Lava Hound or whatever it may be. Next we have the Electro Dragon. Well, I talked about E-Drag a little bit. Pretty straightforward. It's another stun card, which fits really well into your deck. I've already explained why, so I don't need to repeat myself on that, as much as I repeat myself anyway, right? Anyway, the E-Drag also, as I mentioned, talking about repeating myself, is an air unit, so he synergizes really well with the Lava Hound, and just a good range support unit. That Chain Lightning effect, people aren't necessarily too familiar with it yet, so you can take advantage of that. That Chain Lightning effect can be really beneficial. You know, if you've got a witch spawning skeletons, it instantly takes the 3 skeletons out that she spawns with 1 auto attack. You know, it chains to whatever's by their tower. If they've got like a support like a witch or a wizard or musketeer next to the tower, and you've got a Lava Hound on their tower and an E-Drag next to it, the Chain Lightning can hit the tower and then chain to their support and kill it. Great card. I like it. Not in the best spot that it was when it was initially released, but it's still a good card. Well, talked about Night Witch, talked about Fireball. Flying Machine and Mega Minion, pretty straightforward. They're both just ranged support cards. Mega Minion is a very general card, very stable card in many decks, can be put just about anywhere, very similar to an E-Wiz. Ironically, although they're very different cards, they play similar roles. They kind of are used on defense and then provide offensive counter-push threat. You put the Mega Minion when they've got a Musketeer coming down the lane behind the Giant. You put the Mega Minion down to kill the Musketeer. You know, you use the E-Wiz as a ranged support card, or you use them at the bridge to counter their swarm units or whatever. Like, they play similar roles. So the Mega Minion and the Flying Machine, there are just more ranged support cards to have in there. They work out really well. Flying Machine is a great sniper. Stays alive from afar while your Lava Hound or your Golem are just doing work on their tower, and it snipes everything out as well as DPSing the tower. Mega Minion's more of kind of like a defensive counter push card. And I've already talked about the other spells, so that pretty much wraps it up, guys. Alright guys, I thought I would close the video with a live match or 2 here, so let's give this guy a good luck. Let's go ahead and open with the Golem here. And not something I normally do too much, opening with a tank, but it's a little bit safer to do in this challenge, I feel like, because he might not have, like, let's say he's running E-Barbs, for example, or like Lumberjack a Hog. He might not be able to put them into the next lane right away, because they might not have him. He might not have them in hand. Sorry, I'm not talking too well here because I'm focusing on the game. Anyway, you can see that I used that stuff there on defense to counter his Lumberjack. I was just talking about that. He paired it with, what was it? A Dark Goblin instead. And I just kind of tried to support that Golem. Now I know that he has Inferno Tower. And honestly, it's not the worst thing that he used it, because look at this, guys. Here's the theorization behind this deck. I got 2 big tanks. He has no Inferno Tower. Now I have a Lava Hound. So he doesn't have it in hand, and the Tesla is too far away, unless I'm mistaken, to kite the Lava Hound. It looks like the cannon will pull it over, and then the Tesla will be pulled over too. But what I'm going to do here is Flying Machine in the right. Flying Machine should take out that guy right there. We're going to Night Witch here so she can build up her bats. Ooh, he lightning did. Okay, well, that's not a big deal. I'm going to let him do a bunch of damage to the left tower, and I'm going to support right like crazy here. And if I can get a clone in time... Oh, dang, I only cloned the witch. That's too bad. But better than nothing. And yeah, she's going to die to the skeletons are going to die to the Barb Barrel. But a bunch get spawned, and he used both his light spells, the Log and the Barb Barrel there. And it looks like we're actually slightly ahead here. I should be able to successfully defend on the left there with that Lumberjack. No problemo. He's going to kite it into the opposite lane. This is a perfect example of what I was talking about earlier with, like, something you could do with the Valkyrie in rare occasions. You know, just kind of an example of the many different roles that she has. I'm going to actually Giant Snowball this guy because I don't want him to get any damage onto my tower. And, okay, this is weird. I know I said not to Naked Balloon, but I literally had, like, nothing else left. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And that is not bad, because look at that, guys. He used his Inferno Tower now, so he doesn't have it anymore for, like, my Golem. So let's go ahead and Golem right now. And we're going to need to hard defend against that Prince on the left for sure. It's going to wreck my E-Wiz, and it's going to come down the lane here. So we're going to Goblin Gang, kind of split in the center. Some of them may actually go to support the, what was it there? The Golem there. And looks like we've got, I know this is weird, but I'm going to tornado everything just to kill those bats. And then let's just support the heck out of all of this in the right here. And let's fireball that to take out any support that he may have and just to get some more damage on the tower. I do have lightning in hand, which does only 307 damage in this particular, at this particular level is what I'm trying to say. Either way, we're going to Night Witch, right? I don't want to invest too heavily in like a big tank right now, because I know that if I can cycle back to, say, Fireball, then I should be able to just completely zap his tower. Let's see, got to focus here, take out that stuff on the left. Ooh, that was scary. Alright, here's the lightning, and that should take out the tower as well as the, what was that? I'm just too focused on the game right now, guys. I can't even think straight. Oh, there it goes. Death damage from the balloon for the win. Whew! That was intense. Oh, man. I don't know, guys. Like, I felt like that was way more stressful than, like, a normal match. Oh, jeez. Okay, that was a great way to close the video. I don't want to do another one and embarrass myself. I'm going to close it with a fun, exciting match at the end there. If you've made it this far, you seriously rock. I appreciate it, because nothing helps out the channel more than people watching the videos for a long period of time. So the more you watch, the more it helps me out. It means a lot to me, guys. I don't just say that because I'm, trying to be corny, but it really does, because I really want to do well with this YouTube thing and continue it and, hopefully make a couple bucks off of it sometime. Anyway, if you've made it this far, consider leaving the video a thumbs up and leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Answer whatever comment I leave. I try to kind of start a conversation with you guys most of the time. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. You can hit that little burger down there, or just hit the subscribe button anywhere on the page, whatever floats your boat. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, guys, and have a good night.